to the show. Bass Bonsai in the house, not out on the water, and I figured it was time to put my 2 cents in on spools in general. Try to explain for some of the new guys, if you have no clue, you're just getting into fishing or bait casters over, you know, the spinning stuff, like what is up with all these different, you know, terms for the spools and that kind of stuff. So for those of you guys, feel free, if you've been fishing a long time with bait casters, and some of you, I am sure, may know more about the mechanical side of it than I do. It's very possible. But I'm just going to share what I feel I know so far in messing around with all these different reels over the years, back before I started the YouTube channel, Bass and Bonsai, messing with some of the, mainly Daiwa, some Abu Garcia, and some Shimano also. So there's a few things I want to cover. I had one of you guys had questioned me about wanting me to basically check out all or compare all of the boost spools that were available from Daiwa. What kind of gave me the idea is like, well, I should probably talk about all spools and the technologies and what they are and what they do, and then also my take on how I think they work, because I was watching a reel test also, and he was doing that whatever that white Stormtrooper reel is, and I think I'm also going to explain why I think that the best braking system isn't quite out on the market yet. We're going to see better braking systems. You know, if you guys have seen, you know, yeah, it makes common sense, right? Because every couple years they seem to pop up with something that works a little bit better. I don't know why it's taken them so many years to get to where they're at now. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but it seems like it's not complicated. And like if you've watched the CDM market, it's like, oh, here we go. Look, poof, there it is. Now, did they copy somewhat? Maybe. But guess what? They took it to a whole new level. Maybe not as refined, but they made them like as light and kind of as shallow as they could to still give you line capacity, right? It's like, how hard was that? For years, it seemed like they just wanted to get a lot of money from us for these, what they were considering more like a custom spool, right? On BFS. But in general, there's only really two ways to take a spool and slow it down or speed it up. And there's a couple different ways inside of those ways. So back in the day, if you guys remember the old, almost every reel that was a bait caster was a round reel. It had a huge honking spool that had deep, crazy amount. A lot of them were almost so thin it was just a shaft or just enough material to cover the shaft, and you had to, some of them even came with cork like filler material to, then they wouldn't hold as much line, but they all held way more line than needed for bass fishing, way more. So then it progressed over the years to where we're at the point now where you can basically just take thin braid and it just holds enough to throw the lightest of baits for BFS, or these specialized SV MGL spools that are, and DC reels also, that are more refined to aid in the casting and specific types of casting, that kind of stuff, right? But out of all that, there's really only so many things you can do with the spool. You can make it lighter, you can make it smaller or bigger, and you can limit or give it more line, right? The ability to hold the line. So that's why you see everybody popping up with, you'll either have, in like the reels on the Dark Wolf Ultra and them, a lot of companies are now giving you the option 2 spools. So basically you have a deep spool for general all-around fishing, and then your BFS spool. So not only when you're basically taking away material to make that shallower, if that makes sense, from there to there. So naturally this spool is going to weigh more. If you make one deep, say if both these, which they are are 30 millimeters, or if they were 34 millimeters. When you get one and you make it deeper to hold more line, you're adding weight two different ways. You're adding more weight to the spool, but just because it takes more material to make that deep spool, and it's going to hold more line, then it's going to weigh more. So there's also a couple reasons though, even if you use braid, why you may want this spool, because this spool may be better for heavier baits once you get into the heavier end of baits, because necessarily a BFS spool isn't the best spool for even baits that aren't super light, or that are super lights. You know, some of the lighter baits, there still may be a time when a little heavier spool will get you further distance for, you know, if you're strictly trying to throw, say, something under, you know, it's not a half ounce, it's like a 1/4 ounce bait, but you're trying to throw that baby as far as you can get it. There may be a time that you need a little more weight than what a BFS spool can give you. That's where some of the, like they're still small, but like an MGL spool or an SV spool may come into play. So I'm kind of jumping around here, but you basically, you kind of are getting into the market now when you're buying a reel. In the higher end ones, you can get specific on what you want, like take this one, and to the extreme now you have the alphas variants that are basically what we call like one-trick ponies. They're for the lightest of baits, and they actually start struggling because they got strong magnetic braking, small line capacity, so very light, little bitty 28 millimeter spool. That is not going to win any casting distances with heavier baits, say probably 2 grams and up. To where then, even though it's a cheaper reel, cheaper design, spool, and all that, your better option may be these cheaper ones, or like the Aldebaran 22 is probably the best one on the market right now of an MGL spool to, say, cast still lightweight but get more distance out of it. Or you may even want to go to the older Aldebaran MGL, or what I've got coming, the Salamandura, which is a smaller SV spool. And you can also play around with, if you wanted to get, there's several aftermarket spools on the market also. So it's kind of one of those fine things where if you, in my opinion, if you use braid, you have no use for any other spool than MGL, SV, or one of these BFS spools, because all the other ones, even the little, back in the day, I had the MG Extreme 2. That reel held way too much line than I needed for 15-pound braid. It just held way too much. I would fill it about halfway with just cheap line, and then the rest with what I was using. That's almost the way these SV spools are, like this one here. Even though it's a fairly shallow spool, if you're using 15-pound braid on this, you'll actually, I could fill that up with the 15-pound to get it to where the top is, and I would probably not cast down to that, about halfway on one of the longest casts you would make. So there's also ways, as I've done with this one, you can cheat the system. If you say you already have a reel that, like I ended up with, a reel that was almost too high geared for some moving baits. So I took one of my zillions and I only fill it halfway up. It's basically, yeah, it's a way heavier than it needs to be, but I went from what would have been a 34 millimeter spool to, I downsized it to probably under a 30. And yeah, you got the weight out here, but you're basically, that's what you did. You on a real big spool, if you only fill it, you know, not all the way full, you're basically downsizing the size of the spool. It's not going to help you on the maximum distance casting on, say, heavier baits, but it'll help you all around baits and help you throw lighter baits easier. It'll let you throw almost any bait easier if you're, you know, not purely for distance. And I know that can be argued a bunch of different ways, with a bunch of different people. But what I wanted to cover also, so there's all different shapes and sizes of spools, but there's also different braking systems. So, and it's been argued that Daiwa has the most forgiving and the most brake type system and the most adjustable and whatever, but for years the Daiwa spools have had this, some people call it a rotor. It's not really a rotor, it's either a brake drum or an inductor that goes in between the magnets, and they are definitely, none of them, when you first start out, if you haven't watched my video, and there's other videos out there how to use a bait caster, you definitely want to follow a video on somebody showing you how to adjust the reel so you don't get crazy backlashes, what is almost right here, just by having the spool out. But so these are what they call, you have basically what I consider, there's 3 types of braking systems for these reels. I'm not counting the spool tension on the side, because every reel technically you can adjust the spool tension on, so they all have that adjustability just kind of built into them. But then you've got magnetic braking, and then your centrifugal, right? The pins that you can pop in and out, like most of your Shimanos, a lot of the other ones. And then I guess you could call it 3, because then some of them have both. They have dual. But then out of the magnetic side, you basically have some that are what they call dynamic, meaning that the magnetic force changes throughout the cast. Other ones, it's just set. There's no, once you adjust the magnetic force, it's going to be there from the beginning of the cast to the end of the cast. So why does that matter? Why would you want dynamic? Well, in theory, and in most reels it tends to work that way. It'll help you at the beginning of the cast by, you know, the brakes are designed to kick out to their full brake potential, that where they're set at anyway. Because when you the very beginning, when you first make your cast, that very first part, that's when the spool is going to get up to the highest speed it's going to be at. The lure's going at the fastest pace. And that's when you're basically, the braking system's kicking in going, whoa, you know, it starts to slow it down a little bit to keep the spool from backlashing. And it's set properly. It's what it's doing is it's letting that spool freewheel and feed just the right amount of line off, going right through the line guide, right? If you got it set too tight and it's restricting, it's basically, it instantly starts stopping your bait, and you're not going to get the distance or accuracy. If it's too loose, then that's when you see the little fluff ups, or the little, like I've had reels as far before that you'll see a foot of line just kind of stringing out up high above the reel. It's still going, it hasn't backlashed yet, but it's right there. So that's how you just fine tune on your dials. And if it's a magnetic system, you just typically dial on the outside. And I was going to try to show you one. I guess I don't have any that are completely exposed, but like this, you got a dial on the outside that can adjust that. If it's a centrifugal style, I don't even have a reel, I think, centrifugal style nowadays. You're going to have to usually pop up on the side plate, and there'll be different pins you pop in and out, anywhere from 4 to 8. It just could vary on what reel you have. And if it's a dual one, there's usually an adjustment on the outside for the magnets, but the inside you still have to adjust. Now, in most, I guess I would call it the dual ones, I consider those to have a dynamic centrifugal braking system, not the magnetic part. But most of those have little springs on the, not most, I guess some do, springs on the pins. Well, what that lets it do is at the very beginning of the cast, when you cast real hard, the springs don't have enough tension to hold the pin, so the pins will come out and they'll start breaking. But then as it doesn't need them, they come back in, then your magnetic control kicks in. To where I was watching a reel test do the test, and he was adjusting that white reel both ways, and you could tell, and it was basically proving what my theory is anyway. When those pins, when you try to throw real light stuff, you don't really generate enough force to activate them the right way. When they're in that dual system like that, they're more designed for a real hard, the initial very beginning of the cast is where I feel most of that stuff comes in. Then of course Shimano has the ones, or a lot of them have them where they're just a loose pin that doesn't have any other spring tension going the other way, so they're constantly dragging no matter really how slow the spool's going. So those kind of continue all the way out. But the harder you cast, the faster that's going, the more friction they create, and then it softens as you go. But there's still, in my opinion anyway, most of the Shimano systems I've ran back in the day, the MGL, well, up in just a year, maybe 2 years ago, that I had the Aldebaran MGL, and I feel they are almost too restrictive in that I feel they need they maybe need to have those with a pin, like 2 pins clear with no springs, 2 pins with springs, 2 pins without any, and then 2 pins with or whatever, to where you could fine tune it that way. Because I'd almost think you would, on most of them, my thoughts would be that you would want one with a spring on and one without a spring on. And you could cast that baby hard. They'd both kick out in the initial beginning of the cast, and then one would kick back out with the one with the spring. Therefore, you just change the pressure and the drag that you had on that spool. But I don't know if anybody's got anything like that. You guys comment. I don't know. They may have. I haven't seen one. I know a lot of, like I talked about, the dual ones do. And what most of them I've had some Abu Garcias. Some of those have them over the years. I'm sure Lou's probably do now. And then the last reel I had was an awesome casting reel, but horrible gears. If you guys remember the Carbon Light 2.0 reel. I ended up having just a 1 pin, and everybody tells you need 1 on each side. No, you don't need none of that. Two pins on, and no matter where I put the mag, I felt it drug too much. Like it only needed the 1. And it was like at the beginning of the cast, and then I adjusted the magnets. But that was a casting machine. That reel casts very well. The geary noise is, I ended up taking that reel back. It was, I don't know if I got a bad one. A lot of guys tell me I did. If you guys remember right, Matt, he has several of them. He's never had an issue, but I don't know that he uses any of them for truly moving baits. I was using it for chatterbaits for a weekend, and it went to craps. But more on gears in another video. Back to the spools and the braking systems on them. So you've got the, let's talk about, I don't have a Shimano with me. I don't own a Shimano anymore. I traded Brew Tank Outdoors, my last one. But this is a copy of the Shimano, and this one isn't dynamic. These don't move. They're fixed, but they're still a direct copy in the fact that when Shimano came out with the 2016 Aldebaran, up until then, they had pretty much just the centrifugal brakes on their BFS. I think it was just a Aldebaran BFS and then that BFS Limited. And then they came out with this bad boy. They designed this setup, and I don't know if they're definitely not the first to do this. The dynamic part they are, I think, but Avail back had a spool that came with a little, you put the magnets inside, but I think they went directly in there aiming at the internal part of the rotor, not the, around the spool, not the kind of inside of it on the underside. And I think they honestly may have just stumbled upon that by accident by trying to get all of the weight possible off of a spool, because they have the long shaft, and it was still stainless and all that. Nowadays they've got aluminum and everything else. What they did was create, which I agree with, if you guys follow the real test, I like to give him crap and stuff, but he called it the best, it's definitely the best overall BFS braking system that I've seen anyway. Also, I agree with that, because they put it in these, the Chinese copy this and put it in any reel, and those reels just seem to cast real good, whether it's a fixed or a dynamic, whether these things move or don't move. And the way that the Shimano did it, these little arms just kind of jump up and down. And if you guys don't know how these work, because you're probably thinking, isn't that spool aluminum? And aluminum's not magnetic, if you know anything about like metals. But there's just a magnetic force created, and aluminum does not, it's not magnetic in that it'll stick to a magnet, but magnets, it does react to magnets. It'll try to push itself away or do whatever stuff. I kind of learned that back in the day messing with eddy currents in a recycling system. So anyway, what it basically does is it just it generates magnetic field in there that will, puts drag on your spool. And that's why they are kind of a very finicky. You got to get it right. If you guys remember right, on the Dark Wolf Ultras and the Black Knight 2, we had to get the dynamic ones, needed little magnets added to make this a little bit closer to the spools in order to give it enough braking system to work. And then it was awesome. Then they updated it and they just fixed these where they're already basically out. So throughout the entire cast, they're, I guess in a sense, they're generating more magnetic force throughout the whole cast, which then seemed to solve the problem. So if you ask me, so you're probably wondering like, well, what are we missing? Well, I think in the future, because I'm gonna talk about the boost, that guy wanted me to, and I forget your name. I'm horrible with names in person, let alone subscribers or on the internet kind of thing. But he's talking about how they make several different, boost spools. So first of all, the boost technology is real simple. In a sense, it's kind of like the dual braking on the centrifugal with the magnetic, right? So at the very beginning of the cast, see that's a very light spring, but then there's a stiffer spring. So instead of doing it with drag, actual, physical contact, the boost spool does it with this I keep wanting to call it a rotor, but this drum goes out deeper into the magnets, creating more drag at that hardest part of the cast. What that does, it doesn't really, I think the word boost is kind of weird, because what that is actually doing is not boosting anything. If anything, it's creating more braking force. But what that lets you do is have the drag set overall looser and still be able to cast real hard, and then that pops out, slows it down, then it pops back into its normal, because this light spring, it's probably out for almost the entire cast. So what I think they can do in the future, first of all, I know they can put this on a BFS, a true BFS spool. Now they make a shallower version of the SV. They make the PE special, the shallow version. It's basically meant for braid to where you don't have to do like I did on this one. You can put as much braid and still be up there with your 34mm spool. Now I'm sure at some point they should add it to their 32mm spools. You might see it get on an Alpha's Air variant, and then I think you'll have a very awesome BFS spool. Now I haven't torn it apart to see what it takes to do it, but I think, and I don't see why, other than just a space, I don't see why you couldn't add another stage in there. I don't see why it couldn't be, instead of, 1 and then 2, why it couldn't be at some point, or somebody maybe other than Daiwa will have like a 3-stage. Probably don't need it, but they could put it. And then the reel I got coming, that Jay had mentioned, it's kind of, they've kind of integrated, added 2 different ones together. They basically have a rotor that's fixed but adjustable. You can adjust how far in or out it is in, and then what it does, it basically slides into a system that is a dynamic magnetic system. So now Jay swears by it. He says it's a casting machine. I got one coming, we'll check it out. But as far as for BFS, I think either this with the boost type system maybe end up being one of your better ones, as far as maybe not overall sheer distance, but like crazy distance and control. I think the boost thing will be good. And then Shimano, you can't argue the, where do I have all these different reels out? But you can't argue that this system is, it right now for BFS anyway, the best there is. In my opinion, if somebody, I guess you have the 2 top, you have Daiwa and Shimano. And in all honesty, then you have everybody else. Yeah, you got Doyo. They're kind of, the Luz and the Abu Garcias, and they've got a few different braking things. And those centrifugal with the magnets, I think there possibly could be maybe, I don't know, right there with, as far as distance, most of your other ones for regular type baits, like say once you get into that over a quarter ounce, half ounce, where the spool weight isn't as huge a deal, because sometimes you want the weight. You need that spool to kind of be fast spool, because if that bait you're throwing, like say you're out there throwing a 3/4 ounce rattle trap, then you might need a fast spool, a spool that is heavy enough that once you generate that cast is going to stay sped up to as fast as that rattle trap needs it to be going, as fast as it's going. And that's where I see, if as long as it's set right or dialed in to where that the centrifugal part, kicks in on a very hard cast, but then kicks out before it starts hindering the distance, and then you've got the magnet set right. I don't think there's a huge difference in all these, and all I've talked about. You can almost take any reel that's on the market nowadays, and they're pretty good casting machines. I had the MG Extreme 2 back in the day, $500 reel. I gave $500 for that thing off eBay because I found it. It was the first one to come out. If you guys remember those, it had a pin style. They kind of popped out, almost like those Shimanos do, similarly, I think. I can't even remember the name of what they called that, but the MG Extreme 2. Light spool. And that's probably what the downside was to it, because it could barely beat. I bought a Black Max, and I was casting half ounce frog. It could barely beat that Black Max by like a couple feet, and that was it. A lot of these cheaper reels are still casting machines. You guys might recall, I can't remember what all different reels, but the Reel Test had that cheap Shimano. I can't remember the name of it, but he said it had one bearing in it somewhere or whatever, and it had the bushings. The downside, I feel anyway, for that is it may be awesome right out of the box, but you got to kind of be, I'm leery of anything with bushings, because here's the thing about a bushing versus bearing reel. Most bearing reels come with over-greased, oiled, whatever you call it, bearings. And they take a break-in period before then they kind of get into their own, and then they're awesome. Most bushing reels start out like, they're about at their least resistant slop or whatever. And then as you use them, and I don't know for sure about any of this 13 fishing stuff, these new bearings they're talking about, or some of these other companies, maybe they got a newer one, but all the bushings I've seen in the past do get slop, and they get slop fairly quick compared to about the time the bearings are truly into their own and you've got a real good smooth working reel. The bushings are starting to show there something's up with them, kind of deal, especially if you're fishing them hard. But any questions? No? I had all the answers. That was an awesome video. So anyway, let me finish up what I was going to talk about. I almost totally forgot. So in my mind, I've already sort of done, and I know that the shallow, if you guys don't know, and somebody else may also jump in because I may not have named them all. You can get the, oh shoot, I can't think of the name of it because it's a stupid name. The Zillion is silver, and it comes with the SV Boost Spool. Is it called a Silver Wolf, and it's black? Yeah, Silver Wolf. Black reel, same body as the Zillion, comes with a shallower, made for braid, basically, boost spool. Now, it should cast lighter baits better than this, because I've just ran less line. And then you can get the Steez. I believe the limited, I think, came with basically this same spool, and then they've got a shallow version out, which is, I think, I'm not sure about exact weights, but I'm pretty sure that it's the same spool. It's in the silver wolf, other than I'm sure the color is a little different. They may have messed with the inductors a little bit. I'm not 100% sure, but I think you basically only right now you have two options. You can get standard SV boost or the basically a shallow version for braid on the SV boost. Now you can go on Digitaka and get, they sell just a spool for $100 of the shallow ones, P special or something, 1016. Don't quote me 100%, but it's on there for $100 if you wanted to go with the shallower spool. And these will fit in almost all the other, like if you have the previous Zillion to this, the old school Zillions, the TD Ito 103M. Also, if you want to, don't believe me, look up Trey Harple and probably Trey Harple and Zillion, and you'll see that he switched them around. Also on the older one, fits in and works perfectly if you wanted to get a shallow version of the boost spool to run in that. Then you got an awesome machine there. So if there's no more questions, I'm going to end this video, but I will tell you, I'll be looking forward to, on my opinion, why I not necessarily choose, because I still will, and I'm not done buying Shimano reels. At the moment, I've got all AliExpress or Daiwa reels. But if you guys know the channel, stick around. A couple years back, I had Abu Garcia's, kind of switched to Shimano's. I had the Corrado 200K, the Scorpion version of that. And they just kind of bulky and palmed bigger than I liked them. I liked the looks of them, and they cast good. They just were kind of palm heavier. They were definitely nothing what this Zillion is, if you ask me. Now they're cheaper, I think, but yeah. Nate says he's waiting for a new Scorpion BFS to be released. You better keep waiting, son. You'll be waiting a long time. I haven't heard anything on it. The old Scorpion BFS is good. I keep telling you guys, I got the answer to all the problems. They need to just take the Corrado BFS, or actually just that Corrado frame that's now on the SLX BFS, the Scorpion BFS. They need to make that sucker into magnesium. Maybe even make one out of carbon, graphite, or whatever, and sell it. Put it on the SLX maybe or something, just to get it lighter for us guys that like the lighter stuff. But I think if they, like my idea, the perfect Aldebaran would be the Corrado frame in magnesium with the current, if you wanted a BFS, they would need to lighten it up a little more. Now there is a BFS spool floating around. I want to say they say that sucker weighs 3 grams. It's on AliExpress for like $65, and it's not even cut out. It's what makes no sense. I know it's a BFS spool, and but it could actually be even lighter, unless they went so thin on the metal that if you tried to cut anything out, it would crumple up. But I want to say they claim it weighs 3 grams without a bearing on it. So it's got to be super thin and aluminum shaft. But if you guys got an Aldebaran 22 and you wanted to try out a different spool, made out of aluminum foil, crumbles when you set the hook. Yeah, unless you run 1 pound test. No, and that's the thing about some of these spools, like this one, I think I may have already done something to it because it's got a weird, I still can't tell if that's in the bearing or the spool's warped enough that it's making a drag. It spins real free. I mean, it spins like it's not. But that's that chameleon spool. Crazy shallow. Crazy lightweight. Casts like a champ overhead cast. When you try to sidearm anything, that's one thing. A guy like me should not be dealing with crazy aluminum foil type spools. I need a thin one made out of titanium. That's what I need. I can't get this side plate off. But anyway, there's that crazy super lightweight chameleon spool. yeah, I didn't like just how loud this thing sounds. And I'm not going to spend the money just to buy another one to see if it's any different or not. So, anybody? Any questions? I don't know when. Before the new year's up, I'm going to give you my take on what my favorite, and I'm not saying what the best reel of 2022 was, my favorite picks of 2022. Because what the best one is out there, that's really up to whoever, whatever. You could give it by which one sold the most, which one has the most new technology in it, which one casts the longest distance, which one can do this, which one can do that. I'm going to tell you on my experiences, what I've seen or what I've had in the past, which one I feel is still the best reel out there today. You probably take a look at these and get a decent idea of which one I might pick. And I'll tell you right now though, is Acura as good as Dark Wolf Ultra? I like it. I like the fact I'll put it this way. I doubt if I buy another Dark Wolf Ultra now that these are starting to get a little cheaper. Just for the fact of, I don't throw 1 gram trout magnets all the time. I don't really throw this little dude all the time. You know what I mean? I will go creek fishing. That's the last thing I throw, like 1.5, 1.7 gram. And I found these little dudes in 1.7 or 1.8. I found them in a heavier version of them, so I can actually not have to worry about throwing 1.5 grams. So we're going to find out, because I haven't put it head to head. I don't even think I've ever put line on one of these other spools that came with. I went right to because what I wanted them for was for like all around reels, because I had Dark Wolf Ultras. So I just threw on the deeper spools and with full line. And then I did kind of do cast lightweight baits, and man, you'd be surprised how light a bait that thing, even though it weighs like 12 grams now with that, all the line on there, it'll still cast crazy lightweight stuff. So we're going to find that out. I need to get out there and test these before I can really truly call my favorite reel of the year. Is it going to be the Zillion? Is it going to be this? Is it still a Dark Wolf Ultra? Did this guy jump in and steal the show? No, probably not. But we're going to cast him with that. We're going to hopefully take the Salamandura out and just try it. But I'll be honest, it's probably between this guy right here and that guy right there what my favorite reel is. The 22 Aldebaran, if you guys remember right, there's two things. If that 22 Aldebaran didn't have that resistance I could feel on bench testing, it really didn't really have a thing you could really tell. If you remember right, I'd would drop the handle and it almost stick, and you could just feel it when you reeled. There was something in mine anyway. There was a little resistance in the retrieve, just the slightest ever. And then just the gaudy design it had with that crazy brake sticking out. It just looked cheap. Like the reel, it's almost like they were trying to get it out in a hurry and they're like, good enough, throw it out there, in my opinion. Now the plus, if that would have been, honestly, if they just would have revamped the spool like they did with those bearings and it's a quiet caster and stuck it into 2016 and left the color, I probably would still be picking that reel as my favorite of all time. Because they took what the 16 Aldebaran kind of struggled also. It had a little resistance also. It wasn't the smoothest reeling reel of Shimano for sure. But the one thing they did improve, that 22 Aldebaran, and I've also heard the reel test talk about how, that's another thing. And one disagreement I had with him, he was talking about how it was more refined feeling than this reel. I would argue that the casting, the spool bearings, and the freeness of the spool and how quiet it casts, 100% guarantee I would agree with him. But the overall, the way the reels, this one's got some drag, but I think I got that adjusted. Yeah, I got that set a little tight. But I can tell you right now, this hyperdrive, any of these hyperdrives I've tried out are way freer feeling than that 22 Aldebaran. Heck, this this reel broke in now is way freer than that Aldebaran. This is the one I threw it in the water on accident. Then I dunked it in the water on purpose to get the dust and all the gunk off of it. Have not done anything to it. It's fine. The other one, wherever it's at, it's up on the shelf, that I've really been using, it's fine. This one, I don't know. This one is funny. It's still smoother than that Aldebaran 22 was, but there's something there. I know it's got 8-to-1 gears over the 7-to-1, but it's still like something is a little off. I can't call it. I mean, it works fine, but it's just something is off in everything about it, just over the other two. And the only difference is the gear ratio, but I swear it doesn't cast as good. It's hard to explain. And I remember I was watching Gerald Swindle talk about it in a video. I think he was comparing a 6-3-to-1 or 6-4-to-1 to a 7-2-to-1 or something. He's like, I swear my 6 whatever casts better than my 7. He's like, I know it shouldn't have nothing to do with it, but I swear it does. And I'm kind of like that on those reels right there. So we're going to see how much, like, will this throw a 1 gram trout magnet and this 1.5 gram bait way better than the shallow spool on the Acura? I guess if it does, then it's hard to argue that you should stick with the Dark Wolf Ultra over that if you're truly, you know, ultralight BFS, creek and stream, very small BFS fishing. It's definitely hard to beat this. But if honestly it comes within a foot or so, I would have to just push all my money on the Acuras. I just wish they would come out with a dual spool version. Really, color wouldn't even matter, but in this smoothness. These edges are just a smoother, and then this top plate. But then they did this ugly thing here. I've already sort of played around and done it. I've took, because I could do that. I could add just a black frame, put all the silver stuff with the front silver nose cone, and that would be the best looking reel you could get. Other than that, I don't know if I could get along with the black. I'd have to paint it silver too or what. Thing about it is you could buy a couple of these. This was like 55 bucks, I think, when I got it on sale. And these, you could get them as cheap as, if you catch them on sale, they're like 65. You could buy both of these and turn into whatever, you know, if you wanted a Dark Wolf Ultra with the dual spools and have a whole nother basically lineup of different parts, internal parts, drag clickers, you know, all that kind of stuff for not much over 100 bucks, 120 bucks. Just a thought. I definitely feel I like the Acura over the Micro Monsters, and I mentioned it in several videos, the fact that you can't get the dual spool in an 8-to-1, or you have to go 7-to-1 in that certain color. The dark purple is only 8-to-1, and that kind of thing. I like the fact that Acura, I click on I want 7-to-1 or I want 8-to-1, and I can get it with shallow or with both spools for just a little more money. And you're better off to just get both spools. Like, don't even jack around. Just get the other spool just to have, right? Yeah. Refine. Nah, well, Nate's saying that refine. Trying to decide if you should get one or not. Yeah, no, I believe there's definitely something to the refinement process on what you hear talk about, especially with over the years with the Daiwa reels, like because they're not these reels aren't refined yet. They've been working on it. You know, you had the Alpha's Air, Silver Creek, and then this thing. I don't know which in order they came. I think this thing came maybe before the Silver Creek, but they're slowly refining it, I believe, and they may not even tell you. Like a good company, they won't just come out with the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.8, you know. They'll slowly refine it, maybe find a little flaw, something. They just fix that flaw, and they do this and that. But an example I'll use, because the best reel I felt I've used out of the Alphas, the older versions, was the last one. The Airstream Custom, man, that reel just felt better than any of the other Alphas that I've owned over the years. And it was the last one. And some may argue possibly that the Aldebaran BFS Limited was maybe sort of like that. I don't know, but it seems if they stick with the frame that's selling and they just do little subtle changes, you know, just refine the process. And some of them do it, you know, their refinement comes over generations of reels too. You know, because I don't think you could get to this reel if you didn't have all the other TDZs or TDXs, TDZs, and then, you know, you get to this and they've kind of refined their reel making process over the years. And that's what kind of amazes me. You got some of these companies that I don't know how long they've been making some of these cheap, funky reels, but they just go from, you know, in the last, I wouldn't even know how many years, whenever like the XF50, the GH100, and the PW100 first came out. And that was the stupidest name on a reel, PW100. But that purple one, man, that was an awesome reel. I still got it sitting around here somewhere. Now, I'm not a collector, but I do have that one. I changed the side plates on it, but it's the same spool and reel that caught my personal best, largemouth. Hello. Olivia's saying hi. She must be home. Maybe not. So anyway, I guess I'll get out of here. I'm going to also be giving you a heads up on... You guys want a heads up now? No, I'll give you a heads up later on what rods I still recommend. I'll put a video out, but I'm going to just tell you real quick. Any of the Teton rods, I still recommend those. Those are awesome rods. You know me, if I had to pick one, a 661 for just kind of all-around BFS, the 5222 SUL for that truly ultralight. It's still, I think, the lightest BFS rod that I own as far as if you wanted to get the lightest BFS reel you could track down, and I believe that 522 SUL is the lightest rod, and it's crazy light, and is capable of catching, I think I caught a 2-pound bass, like the first fish I caught on it. And then I broke it out testing in the yard. I basically just grabbed it, bent it in two, and I snapped it. But I glued it back, and it still works just fine. If you follow what it tells you on that, you will never break that rod. That is an awesome rod. All the Tetons are. The Kind Conquerors, which I don't even think they're on AliExpress anymore, those are horrible. Don't recommend those. But then, as far as, I still like the Zephyrs, the Cast King Zephyr and the Valiant Eagle. And I don't have one, but man, they look good. And Jimmy from Raw Fishing, if you don't know him, go check out his channel. I'm sure you guys all know him. But he did a review on one a while back. And now, if you guys didn't know, the Valiant Eagle, it's on sale right now on AliExpress. Like it's every $40 you get $5 off. I think it's $75. And then, so you're going to end up, $62, I think, was my cost if I just bought it. But the Valiant Eagle now comes in a lot of different lengths. There for a while, the 5.6, I think, was a 2-piece, and the 6-foot was a 3 or something like that. But now they make a 6'6" light or a light plus, and a 6-foot light or something. But they're 2 pieces. Man, I want to buy a 6'6", but I just can't justify. I don't even need. I got 5 or 6 BFS or oh my God, BFS rods that I hardly ever get time to get out and use them. But I wanted to buy one, and a CU double. I don't have one. Charles has one. I put a handle on and sold it to Charles. I want to get another one of those because I'll tell you what I did also do. If you guys remember right, another rod that is expensive, but man, I like those, were the streamers, right? The Lure Star streamer rods. I had the light and the ultralight. Ultralight's a little shorter, like 5'3", or yeah, is it 5'3"? I think. And then 5'6" on the light. Well, I broke the light, jacking around, me bending. I should not have taken the pre-workout before I started messing with the rods. But anyway, snapped it. I was going to try to fix it. I'm like, you know what? I love that handle assembly. My plan is to get a CU double and disassemble it and disassemble this handle, keeping it secured and putting it on the CU double. Because that CU double, 6-foot with a light tip, and I have the ability to put the ultralight tip on it also. It'll help and overall me out. Because that's one of the best rods for just test casting, and it works awesome. I like the light tip for just real small cranks. It's just an awesome rod. So anyway, that'll probably be coming up. But then that Toma rod, if you guys remember the Toma rod, let me grab it because you guys may not know which one I'm talking about when I just say that name. I'm sure you guys all know the other ones. Let's just show them to you real quick. I know. All my videos are short. They're real quick until I make them real long. I just got a handful of them right here anyway, and I'll just show you. Just going to get a quick glimpse and we'll go through them more in detail. But there they all are. These are all the BFS rods. If you guys remember right last year, Charles went crazy too, and he has some. And comment if you want. I'm going to try to get Charles to bring all his BFS rods and reels, or I'll go down to him with all my BFS rods and reels and just show you what we got and what we kept, and or what we still want to get, or what we threw in the pits because we're morons, right, Charles? And we need to go fish out. But there's probably still my favorite BFS rod, and it's the most expensive. That Rainy Stream from Kyram. I just love that rod. I'm still not 100% sold on the handle assembly. It looks real good, feels real good, but it's hard to find a reel that looks good on it. But that's a $200 rod. I still love that rod. I love the blank material and how light and it's awesome rod. Here is a Toma that looks not quite in the same caliber, but looks like a very good, and it's all like aluminum handle with the wood. But that's only like a $30 or $35 rod, and it's a good rod. It's a touch on the whippy side with the ultralight tip, maybe. It's kind of like almost a full flex with the light tip, but man, I love that rod for what it can do. Then of course the Tettons, and of course you see the Zephyr right there, and then here's there's the ultralight. Yeah, 552 ultralight. So I guess was that a 6 foot maybe then? Maybe that was a 6 foot light that I broke. But that is my favorite as far as overall comfortable. You'll see these dogs are going nuts over here. Must be a cat bug go around. But so what I'm going to probably do, instead of trying to fix that rod, because if you remember right, the downside to these, they get a little flaky on the coating on them. But they're awesome rods. I can't knock them. They feel very good. But I think I'm going to take that handle assembly. I may not even worry about saving the cork end of it because I may change that up again. So I may try to get this and this off without damaging it. And then I know I can easily get the CU double stuff off without damaging the blank. And then put that on a CU double. Because I think the CU double, then I'll have a more versatile rod, just in the fact it has ultralight and a light tip, and I probably like that light tip better than any of these others except for the 661 Tetton. But for ultralight, I like this guy right here, the Rainy Stream, because it's kind of it's ultralight but with a touch more power, I guess I'd call it, than the Tetton 522 SUL. But if you're going for the lightest and not the most, well, they're sort of expensive. But there's the 522 SUL. I definitely call this Rainy Stream a fancier, more for you guys wanting that cool factor, maybe over a Tetton. But Tettons have kind of become a cool factor all on their own, haven't they? I think when they first came out, people thought they were some gaudy looking rod, but when you see them now, you're like, oh, a Tetton. Those things are good for BFS. All right, guys, get out of here. I'll go into more detail on the rods at some point, and we'll be picking out. Oh, thank you. Nate says happy birthday. It is in a few hours. It's tomorrow. Nate says he'd stick with the 6.6 Tetton. Yeah, that's another thing. Nate said exactly what was on my mind every time I think about it, the CU double. I don't think about it that often, just when I'm doing a video occasionally. But since I've been looking at the CU double, they make a medium light, medium version, which is a longer version than the 6 foot one. I think it's 6'6" maybe. But I think it's a 7 foot version, but it's never available. It's like it shows it's there and it's out of stock, but it's never in stock. You can't get it. Yeah, I would definitely buy one, and then if I liked it as good as I do the other C double, I'd probably buy another one. But the another rod that I guess I'd mention, just that I think you guys all ought to buy one if they pop back in stock at any time. And Charles has talked about their three-piece rod, and I can't even think of the name of it right now. Let me see if I can find the handle. Then I'm out of here. I gotta go. Let me see if I can find the handles. I can't remember the name of it. Whoa, 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 whoa. Here they are. Here they are. Oh boy. Look out. Fire in the hole. These two rods. Now, I recommend them just because they're so cheap. But these DMX Street Bass, if you remember right, I bought the one. I raved about how good it was. Sold it to Charles. Bought it back from Charles. They've been getting beat up here lately, but just for a throw around, it's a three-piece. Throw it in your car. Throw it wherever you can get them. And what's this one? The one is always out of stock. I'll try to show you the 198 medium light. It's like it's impossible to get anymore. But if you can get it, look it up, track it down, I would suggest that one. But then this one also, the 210 medium, which this is I want to say 6'9". This is a 7 foot, but it's more of a medium. But they both work for like just an all around kind of a bass rod. They're not the I don't know how to call it. I would say they're not the lightest, but they're not the heaviest rod you'll deal with. But for a three-piece, they are very sensitive. They got that monocoque style, whatever. But these rods just work. They look and feel, they palm, and they look good, other than the fact they're three-piece. But for the money, you cannot beat those DMX Street Bass. If you go to a little better blank quality and like a two-piece, same handles and stuff, they'd jump in the price up to like $100. I want to say these are like $34, but awesome rods. I like this one even better. It's got this screw, and the thing is, you can actually change those around because the fact it's three-piece, there's nothing stopping you. You can just unscrew the one and slide it onto this one or whatever you want to do. But that, at some point, I may get these back out into, I don't know, I got so much stuff that I don't even use half this stuff. Thanks to you guys. Want to know what something was like, and I just buy it, try it, and then go, yeah, it works good, but I don't need it. Put it in the corner. But I'm definitely, the carbon lights, I love those rods. Just for the fact I think they're perfect for braid. If you fish with mono or fluorocarbon, you probably want to stay away from the carbon lights. But if you don't, then I would suggest those. And the if you do like fluorocarbon, if you're just not a braid guy, those DMX rods I just showed you, the oh shoot, I can't think of the name of it. Charles has the one I had, and I broke the other tip off the other one. The Karza 2. The Karza 2 rods, I think you would like that Karza 2 for a bottom, for like BFS, bottom bouncing on the medium light, and then the medium, or the light, and then the medium light was just all around. That was a good rod up until I snapped it, and I did that janking it out of the boat, and line got caught and it snapped. So anyway, yeah, that's what Nate, their DMX rods. Yeah, that shorter DMX rod, the medium light. I don't know how. I just seen it, bought it, and then that's what I've talked about before. It's one of those things. I got one, and then you can't get it anymore. Just like that little popper. Other stuff that pops on. You'll see it on AliExpress. I'll go to recommend it to you guys. Now you can't get it no more. But as far as I know, you can get that bigger one, and it's like for all around just a bass fishing rod. That's a pretty good rod too. No, Nate asked me if I ever got one of the Shimano Majestic rods. No, I just saw them on the thing, and they're like $30, 65 to ship or something. I'm like, no, nope. Maybe one day if I get back into Shimano reels, I'll get a Shimano rod. I keep watching Tactical Bassin. Every time Matt Allen talks about favorite anything, he mentions the that 610 medium. Oh shoot, I already forget the name of the rod. You guys know what I'm talking about, the Shimano rod. And I've been debating on buying that just to see what that rod, why he likes that rod so much. But I don't think I'd like it because 6'10" medium. I don't know. That's a lot of money though, just to buy a rod that I won't like. But I've done it before. And then if I had to pick, like I don't have any plans of ever buying another NRX Plus rod, older NRX rod, but I wouldn't mind, at some point I might get some sort of one of the MBR Loomis rods and try out. Yeah, that's what I think. A lot of these companies use AliExpress kind of as they'll put something out there, sell it dirt cheap, and then just get it selling. And then once it does, like Nate was saying, they either change the name or do something, or they just jack the price up. Because the Teton rods, man, when they first came out, oh, it was such a bargain. If a guy would have known, he'd have just bought them out. Bought every time they popped up, just bought them until they did go up in price, and then sell them here in the States. Which that's something that I don't know if he's got that kind of money floating around, but Bait Finesse Empire, maybe he's on to or watching. If something pops up, people start talking about it, it's cheap, but then that just jacks the price up for all of us. But oh well. If I had the money, I would do it on some of this stuff. I've seen something that, like, there's some stuff still floating around on AliExpress. I'm like, I don't know how they can sell it that cheap. There's like, for instance, that $20 reel, it's not the greatest reel in the world, but I can't ship a reel for 16 bucks. Like, it's 15 bucks or more to ship a reel. How can they sell me the whole thing and ship it all the way from China to me for $20? I don't get it. I guess just in such volume. All right, guys, I got to get out of here. Thanks for watching. I'll try to do a live stream tomorrow. It is my birthday, but I will try to put a live stream out. Possibly, maybe not. Maybe partying too hard. No, I won't be partying. Did I already talk for an hour? Jesus, why didn't somebody stop me? This was a quick video. And then this cast test is going to happen, but right now, tomorrow, we're into like these crazy cold temps, and tomorrow night it's supposed to be a snowstorm, and then like 8-degree highs, negative 3-degree lows. So probably won't be before Christmas. Yeah, Nate's like, I try to keep you talking. Yeah, I know. Trust me, I'll sit and talk. Like when it comes to his fishing reels, I remember I was a kid. I went fishing. I went with my dad. He was a car, like just wheeled and dealed with cars. And he would go, we'd be going somewhere, and me, him, my mom would stop, and he was just getting out to either drop off a car part or do something stupid. And 2 hours later, he's still out there talking to whoever, a couple guys, talking about cars and different stuff like that. And that's kind of like me with this fishing stuff. Like me and Charles, I'm like, come on, Charles, stop talking. We got to fish. We'll get on little. I've seen us show up to go fishing. If somebody got something new, we'll be on the bank talking about it for a half hour before we ever get out and start filming. Just go fishing, then we'll talk about it when we're done. And you've seen in some of the videos, we'll sit and talk about it right in the middle of fishing, and some of that stuff I leave in or whatever. But fishing reels are cool. Well, bait casters. I ain't got time for no fairy wands, right? Spinning reels. Jesus. There was a time I liked spinning reels. Not anymore. I got tired of the whole bird's nest. That wind knots. Not bird's nest. Wind knots. Man, I couldn't figure out how to keep them from happening. I was like, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Then line's tied in a knot and it won't come out. And you're like, oh, that line's done. That reel's done. Put it down. And the fact they take up so much space. Even a little bitty one. A spinning reel just takes up more, space. They take up more space, a spinning rod and reel combo, over trying to get them in and out or do whatever with them. I'm so much happier at all bait casters. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll be back.